Welcome to this session. My name is Ajit Singh. I'm an enterprise agile coach. In this session today, I'll be talking about common sensing the agile transformation with fearless questions. Before I start, let me express my gratitude to the Regional Scrum Gathering Sri Lanka for providing me this opportunity to present my topic. Let's move on to the agenda. In this session today, I'll be quickly checking a fact sheet on agile transformation. We'll try to understand the common sensing in the organizations. We'll explore why and how of fearless questions. We'll see the major transformation stages and the scope of question that can emerge and how. We'll see what are the mental models that need to be created. And then I'll be talking about a questioning framework and a technique. So first thing first, the reality of agile transformation. The reality of agile transformation is that they're never ending. They were there when we started to transform the waterfall methodologies to the agile ways of working. Then we started scaling. Then we are focusing on creating the product centric approaches. And then we are building learning organization. And the list goes on. So transformations are there, they are existing in some another form. But then another reality about the agile transformation is that they do fail. They do fail as much as 47%. And this is what the Forbes Insights and MIT Sloan Management study collectively says. And one may wonder, what are the reasons for it? We don't have to go far. If you look at the latest 15th State of Agile report, it lists down the top three challenges in the agile transformation. 46% responded says that inconsistent processes and practices across the teams become the major challenge. 43% responded says organizational culture at odds with agile values, the number two region. 42% says that general organization resistance to change is another challenge which or blocker which comes on the way of successful agile transformation. Organization resistance could be connected with the structural changes also. So what we see here is processes, practices, culture, structures, all some other form are not finely tuned and become a roadblocker in the agile transformation. So what it tells to us, it tells that agile transformation is not a set of certain mechanical steps that you can follow based on some case study or book or article being published, or maybe some of your experience that you might have in a different shop. But every organization is different, right? It's different. That's why you have to continuously adapt to the evolving circumstances of the organization, right? What are the factors that you need to tune in? Are the processes part, the technology part, the structure part, the people part, and underlying culture within which the organization work, right? So you have to consider everything to build that essential agility, right? Because there may be processes which are more compliance driven. There's less that you can do. There may be technologies in an organization which are based on the legacy systems, right? Like mainframe, you cannot run uh, 2 weeks batches into it. Probably it needs a different arrangement. And the structures are very much required. They are deeply rooted in the organization. You can't change that overnight as well. So whatever the realities of the organization is, we need to see how do we create the essential agility and change the ways of working there for the better value deliver, better value proposition that the organization is seeking. For that, we have to make sense of its circumstances, right? We have to leverage our common sense, which can help us to contextualize the changes for that organization. Now we are talking about the common sense. What is the common sense then? There's a very popular definition from Josh Billings, who's a famous writer from the 19th century, that says that common sense is the knack of seeing things as they are and doing things as they ought to be done. Meaning, you don't have any room for assumptions, and it's all about the right thing that has to happen in the given context, right? But another proverb on common sense is that common sense is also uncommon, and that's what we've seen in many organizations. And supporting that is one case study, famous case study about this one of the top shipping company, Masak, who at one point of time was struggling with the customer satisfaction, and the departments were pointing to each other. So they hired the consultants who worked on, uh, went on seeing the operations of this company and gathered a lot of data. And they focused on the call center, right? Customer executives, and they found out that for every customer uh, complaint, most of the time, these employees at the call center were pressing a button called force majeure. And by the way, this was a emergency button, right? If there's something urgent, then this button need to be pressed. But then for every complaint request, they were, kind of pressing this button and filling one page form. They were not going for other buttons, even in the normal circumstances, because that required them to fill 4 to 5 pages and would have eaten up their time. But they wanted to stay more productive and show more productive, so they pressed that button. But then this also brought in some sort of SLA for them to address the complaint. If they couldn't, then that case they will press another button, blind forward, and pass it to the next department. Now, next department is wondering why this request has come to me, and they started pinpointing at each other. In all this, the customer got affected. That customer has been talking to a customer executive sometime before, and after a time, he's talking to someone else in some other department, and he's trying to explain the things again. The person in the department is not able to empathize is what is the solution needed here. So customer got impacted. The customer dissatisfaction increased. At the same time, the pinpointing also increased. The real root of the problem was that there was a KPI uh, which was more focused on the performance. The only factor that was considered for the performance was the time, and that's where everything went wrong, because the focus become more inward than the outwardly focus, bringing the outward focus to the customer. So when the experts work with them and the common sense prevailed that our industry exists because we serve the customer, and customer, you know, all those KPIs has to be customer centric. Then they went on redesigning it, and then the new KPIs come up, which were related to the reliabilities, the issue resolution, invoice quality, right? And then things started changing for them. And this is by the way, a case study in the book called Ministry of Common Sense. If you get a chance to read that book, what it indicates is that the bigger the organization, the more common sense issues there typically are. And when we're talking about the agile transformation, most of the time we are dealing with the large organization. And we can imagine that common sense could be a challenge there, and it really need to be proactively understood and addressed to have a successful agile transformation. So yield to the common sense and contextualize the changes in the backdrop of organization standing, right, with respect to the processes, structure, culture, people, leveraging their yearly earned knowledge and experience so that the people can understand the rationale behind the changes. They can check on the feasibility of the changes collectively. They can evaluate the possible alternates grounded in their reality, so that they can connect with the changes, so that they can identify the relevant actions which they can do and own it to the completion. That's the advantage the common sense will offer. But where are the roots of the common sensing? If we go by the report of World Bank, which they produced back in 2015, the World Development Report 2015. In that, they have dedicated one section on the mental model itself, and that is based on various empirical studies that they've done. In that, they concluded that the common sense is the result of the people's mental models, right? And what is the mental model of a person? Mental model is the understanding of an individual of what is right, what is natural, what is possible, right? Based on their own experiences, their own evidences that they've seen in the life, their own ideologies, their own aspirations, which they leverage to form a mental model. And based on that, you know, they make the decisions and take it for granted. So, how mental models can yield to the different behaviors and different interpretation of the things. There's an interesting case study named as Bad Boys, right? Bad Boys, when back in Zurich, Switzerland, in a prison, the authorities decided that we'll conduct a study on the prisoners to see the fact of criminal identity on their dishonesty. So what they did, they give 10 coins to each of the prisoner and they asked them to toss it. If the head comes, they can keep the coin with them. If the tail come, then they need to return the coin. But before they could toss the coin, the authorities rolled out a survey randomly to all the prisoners. In some of the surveys, uh, the prisoners were asked to fill in their criminal identity, and for others, they were not asked. So when the result came out, it was very interesting, and being statistically put also, when this greener bar represent the prisoners who were not asked to um, expose their criminal identity, and this red chart is of those prisoners who were asked to fill their criminal identity in the survey. The blue line that you see here is the normal distribution of how that people should have responded in the ideal situation. What we see is that this greener chart is slightly skewed towards the better. People were more honest in returning the coin when they were not asked to expose their criminal identity. But people were more dishonest. The graph is slightly skewed towards the negative when they were asked to disclose their criminal identity in the survey, right? So the mental model changed in the context, how they interpreted their own value and what they think is the right thing to do, right? If I'm considered already a criminal, probably it's okay to be dishonest. If nobody's asking me disclosing my criminal identity, probably I'm not supposed to be behaving like a criminal, right? So they use different models in different contexts, and that's what uh, uh, is a useful conclusion that all of us have, that individuals have different and competing mental models that they use depending on the context, and it gets activated in different contexts. Different kind of models will emerge. It also tells that mental models may be out of sync with the real world, right? They may not be complete, and since they are not complete, then in that case, people try to fill in that mental model with uncertain details, with assumptions and incorrect things that they should not be. So that necessitate that we should really be not taking the people's mental model for granted, but then we should always work to help them out. The good news is that mental models are somewhat malleable. They can be changed. They can be changed with exposure to the alternate ways of thinking. So how do we change the mental model? Right? There can be many ways, but one of the powerful ways and very established way of changing the mental model is by asking the questions. And that's what Jeff Wyke, the ex Amazon CEO of Worldwide Consumers, said in this book, Questions Are the Answer, that if you never ask questions, and you never experience anything new, and you never enter any crucibles, your mental model becomes stale. You don't really build any new awareness of the world. But if you seek out things that you don't know, and you have the courage to be wrong, to be ignorant, to have to ask more questions, and maybe embarrassed socially, then you build a more complete model which serves you better in the course of your life. So, what it's saying is that building the complete mental model is more important in whatever the initiatives or endeavors we are in. By asking more and more questions, even if it comes at the cost of being wrong, even if it comes at the cost of being ignorant, even if it comes at the cost of being socially embarrassed, but then ask questions fearlessly, ask fearless questions. So, how do we define the fearless questions then? The fearless questions are basically the tough questions that challenges the status quo, that challenge the fundamental assumptions, which can help you reframe the perspective, giving you the 360-degree view of the problem, right? People may be focused on one direction, but then when you ask fearless question, it may give a different perspective to the same challenge and problem. And also, it can put people into the awkward situations. They do generate lot of insights. They do elicit emotions to bring the facts out. The fearless questions can bring the facts out. And that's what we want to have when it comes to our transformation journey. That what is the facts that we can use to build the right transformation solutions. Now, one may ask, is there an example of nice question versus fearless question? So think of a team which is struggling with the defects, and a nice question to them could be, what is your plan to reduce the defect? A fearless question will be, what is failing you to control the defects? So this is a more direct question to them. It can make person feel vulnerable, right? Spot on. And seeking the truth, right? So questions like this, which are fearless, emerges out of certain conditions, right? What are those conditions? Conditions are that they are unexpectedly wrong. You are in a conversation and you probably intend to be asking right questions, but then you go on asking the wrong question also, which you didn't expect. Now that's perfectly fine because they may end up becoming bringing the more truths outside. They can make people uncomfortable unusually, right? Like this one or many other, which uh, uh, people didn't expect actually, so, which probably addresses the elephant in the room. But then this is what it is meant to be. They emerges when you were less compelled to speak. You didn't think you'll talk about it, but then it just happened that you went on asking it. That's perfectly fine. It's effectively quite to have these kind of questions multiply in them and have more questions on top of it, right? Reflectively quite meaning I asked one question which challenged certain aspects in the discussion. I went quiet. And then based on that, many more questions emerged from other people. Maybe I reflected on that question to have many more questions, right? So this just multiplies and takes the discussion forward. But another condition for fearless question is that it has to be generated into the safe environment. Safety has to be built. And question should not be toxic. Non-toxic questions are encouraged because they are not meant to be demeaning anyone or personally hurting anyone's sentiment. Now, while we're talking about the fearless question, uh, you might be wondering: is there any facts and data which supports that the fearless question makes the difference? And the good news is, yes, the fearless question makes a lot of difference. And there is a study done by Hall Gregerson, the famous innovation expert. In his book, Innovators DNA, he's produced this data where he says that uh, the CEOs of innovative companies had the fearless questioning skills up to 88%. And this percentage was found less in the CEOs of non-innovative companies, right? Where they just had fearless questioning skills up to the 62%. So this is a very good data which supports that fearless questions makes a lot of difference, right? So why don't we use this in our transformation initiatives to make best use of it, to stay in the right direction and not regret at the later stage. So till this point, I talked about uh, common sensing, mental models, and how to use the fearless questions to build the right mental models and develop the common sense. Now let's come to the transformation. How do we use this information or build a common sense at first and have right questions to take on the journey of the transformation? At a very high level, we have four stages in the transformation. First is we aspire for the future, that this is what we want to be. And we discover also at the same time what is a current assessment of our situation, what is our current standing with respect to the Agile. And then we design the solution with respect to how which framework will be used, how the teams will be formed, how will they align the vendors, and what will be our value proposition to the customer. Then we roll it out, we gradually scale it to the different departments, different teams, and we continuously improve based on the data driven conversation to make these agile transformation more sustainable. In all these stages, the four things which are at the center of the transformations are people. People covers the leadership who need to be trained, right? The managers and the senior stakeholders, the talent management team, which will work on attracting and retaining the talent, the cultural aspects, how do we, create that kind of, foster that kind of culture and build the growth mindset, and how people are going to interact with each other and build the communities and the networks which fosters the agile ways of working. Then comes the processes part, right? Processes and practices which the teams have to adopt, which the people will be using to, make best of the plans, roadmap, release planning, PI planning, right? Rolling wave planning, and the performance management aspects, right? How the team will be assessed for their outcomes. Then comes the technology part, right? Where uh, delivery pipeline will be built, uh, right? The architecture practices will be brought in, emergent architecture per se, and then what kind of systems and tools will be leveraged, what kind of infrastructure and operations will be required, to support the agile ways of working. And finally, it's about structure, where we get into the role rationalization. We break the old roles and we try to create some new roles and responsibilities, and we try to, size the workforce by creating them into certain number of teams, and we try to co-locate them, those sort of things, and overall a governance around it. While in these four stages, these four aspects are always there and being considered. People are engaged in the discussions, people are coached, and people are asked questions. But where it matters most, so that we need to hit hard, we need to ask questions fearlessly, we need to be absolutely being right as possible, right? There are at least two phases that we can certainly identify. And those phases are like, are we making a right aspiration of where we want to be by having a correct assessment of our transformation, our standing as an organization, right, with respect to the constraint that we have all over. And then considering that, what is the kind of design with the, which we want to come up, right? Maybe the frameworks and peoples and alignments, right? And all uh, standing of the organization with respect to agility to deliver value to the customer before we roll out and then scope. So these two phases, right? becomes very important, where we really need to have a lot of discussions and right questions asked when people ghost. But for that, we need to, as I said in the previous slide, also make a lot of common sense. Also, we really have to rely on the common sense, and the common sense in these initial two phases with respect to these four aspects could be different and will make a lot of difference. If I have to talk about the people, the common sense at stake is that we are humans. Our survival depends on the empathy, how we feel. If we keep this common sense at the center of designing the initiatives around the people, we may ask right questions there, right? Right questions as in, uh, what if what is one thing that we can do so that it makes people excited about this transformation? What can happen if the leadership, besides their training and coaching, try to bring the waterfallist mindset into the iterations and create undue disruption there, impacting teams' moral? So these kind of challenging questions, right? These kind of straight questions have to be asked around when we be thinking about the people aspect in the transformation. With respect to the processes, the common sense at stake is that we should not be blind to what customers want. The moment we become blind to the customer, we become inwardly focused, and then we are more into entangled in the processes and practices and vanity metrics, feeling happy about it, but then end of it, it doesn't add more value to the customer. Actually, the status remains same. So we have to put up the questions, and what are those conflicting processes which are not yielding any direct customer value? What are those processes which are locally optimizing the things, making people happy, but then it doesn't add overall value? Or maybe it is their effect gets uh, limited after a certain point, because there are many other processes on top of it which doesn't let this boom actually. Or what are those compliance processes which have to be taken care of, but then still there's a feeling that they are overly done, and who do we challenge there so that we can get them lean? So these kind of questions will put you in place when you would try to figure out what are the essential things to do and what are the non-essential processes we can certainly get rid of. With respect to the technology, the common sense at stake is that uh, we don't want to overcomplicate the simple things, but we really want to build the essential agility. Plethora of tools, right? Plethora of architectural practices and delivery pipelines. Nowadays, very popular. If you brought in everything, but we fail to understand what is that is needed. One simple question and fearless question, of course, you can ask is, what is the value they are bringing for the organization, which otherwise the organization was not having before? So that way, you will start filtering down that it doesn't add you any direct value. It's just an additional mechanism that you're adding, and probably increasing your cycle time there, which you would like to cut over. With respect to the structure, the common sense that should prevail is that amidst these structural changes, role rationalization, whether it is in the less framework or scale agile framework, different kind of roles, the ways the teams are set up, and the location constraint and governance, people, employees want to feel trusted and safe. End of the day, it's about fostering the culture of collaboration, right? So the questions that you can really ask is that, how do I unlock the human potential by leveraging this common sense to constructively and productively engage them so that we have a better value proposition for the customer, right? It's just not about structural changes and just wondering how would they yield any significant result, but then being slightly more active by using this common sense that the structural changes are for a region, and they should directly be contributing to making people more happy, and safe, because end of the day, it's their performance which is going to make a lot of difference for the organization and for the customer also. So till this point, we talked about fearless questions and the common sense at the stake in transformation. And fearless questions, as I said, could be emerging from the conditions that I talked about, and it could be anything. But for the transformation initiative, we would like to be slightly tentative, right? We would like to build the right mental models of the individuals, right? And even exhibit that mental model, so that we are aligning people to the transformation journey and reaping the maximum benefits there. And for that, there are a couple of mental models that we can consider. This is a great work done by this person, Saint Paris, who has written this book, The Great Mental Model. In this, he has come up with hundreds of mental models. Now, for transformational journey, if you have to just narrow down on a couple of them, at least three of them, then we can definitely talk about mental models. Um, One of the mental models, inversion mental model. And why we're talking about this mental model is because uh, we want people to develop certain behaviors which make them actively assess what is doable, reframe their perspectives, challenge the assumptions, and slightly be more active in understanding what is working, what may not be working, so that uh, uh, we reduce the chances of being failed in transformation. Right? And that's where building these kind of mental models become very important. uh, of course, by asking the right questions. And when we are talking about the mental models, the questions are inbuilt into that. The first mental model that we can look forward to build by asking questions is this inversion mental model, widely practiced by people like Charlie Munger, a famous entrepreneur. The basis of this mental model is that you try to invert any challenge or task that you're going to undertake, right? For example, we want to build a balanced and effective cross-functional team. Then we think the opposite side of it, that we may not have a balanced and effective cross-functional team. Why we may not have it? Because we are not having the skill sets, the market conditions are not good, where we can go and tap the resources, and probably the people are not willing to get transformed into and formed into the small teams and deliver into the iterations. So these are the possible reasons, and there could be many more. So buying inverting you know the task and the challenge that you're going to undertake, you are already thinking about what can go wrong, and you are addressing those challenges. You are reframing your perspective, and then you start hitting them one by one, so that your success rate increases to take on that original task and challenge that you wish to complete. The basic idea of this mental model is that uh, we want to be, it's better to avoid the stupidity. Avoiding the stupidity is easier than seeking the brilliance, right? In the pace of seeking the brilliance, which is more forward looking, which you don't know whether would happen or would happen or not happen, it's better to look backward and see what is that we can control, what is that we can address, so that the prospects of future also gets better. The other famous mental model is the first principle thinking, which is used when you are making some significant decisions, right? In the case of transformation initiative, you can think of designing the frameworks and setting up the teams in certain structures and all that. This principle says that don't take the existing solutions by the face value. Try to examine it, try to break into the pieces, understand the various pieces, then reassemble it, and reassemble it to see whether it still provides the kind of solution that uh, you are seeking. And if that is not the case, then go on building some other solution which is more fitted in in your context and for your organization needs, right? And this is the mental model which is very widely used. Elon Musk, in fact, he has went on talking about the first principle thinking in a couple of his videos. And we know that is the famous producer of the Tesla car and the owner of the SpaceX agency. And he has used this first principle thinking in that for Tesla, right? When it came to building the battery, which can uh, be long lasting and more effective to support that car, he went on breaking that existing batteries in the market into the pieces and figure out nickel and lead and many other component of it. Then the Tesla reassembled everything um, to come up with something unique, which was more suitable to their needs, which were more cost effective. And don't have to say that where's Tesla today, a very successful car in the market. So he used the Pressman thinking. Same is the case with our transformation initiative. If we blindly go where the scale is high, less, or discipline, or whatever, then probably we're missing the point there. There is a organizational reality when we have the funding issues and skill issues and certain kind of structures because those are required fundamentally to run the organization. In that context, what are these frameworks and designs are offering? Then break it down and just collect whatever is needed and yeah, either it gives you the solution as it is, or you go on designing something uh, uh, something very you know in your context which can be useful. The other mental model that we really want to flourish through in our discussions by asking the questions is the second order thinking. Second order thinking is a mental model popularly used by people like Warren Buffett, right? When they say that, okay, we are going to roll out something in the market, and but have you thought about the consequences? Have you thought about the reactions, and how we are going to handle those unforeseen challenges and reactions? Are we getting ready for it, right? So while delivering a solution is easy, preparing for its unforeseen challenges and situations and reactions is definitely. Would vendor align in our transformation initiative? Would vendor align to our ways of working? What if they don't support, right? What if the leadership just start leaving the organization because they cannot accommodate this agile ways of working? What if the teams are not comfortable that iteration delivery in 2 weeks time? What are the measures we're going to take? So there are a whole lot of things that you can think, but then thinking in advance makes a lot of assumptions being corrected right on the time and provides you new perspective and better prepare you for the transformation journey. So is there a framework where we can poster the questions, fearless questions, right? As I said, in the transformation stage, there are a lot of meetings happening all over where we are engaging the employees, we are engaging the stakeholders, we are engaging the coaches, consultants, vendors. And in these kind of meetings, we need to create a certain kind of framework so that we are having the maximum outcome realized from those kind of meetings. Three stages, three steps, in fact. One is that in any meeting, you set the stage, then you poster the participation, and then you respond proactively. What do you do in the setting the stage? You first set the context that what is that at stake at this moment from the transformation initiative perspective, why it matters, and how it is going to help all of us, right? Then we set the expectation that everyone's voice matters in the discussion, and it's perfectly okay to be wrong, but it's better. What is encouraged is voice. Everybody has to speak up and reiterate the safety that it's okay to ask any kind of question. Nobody is going to be asked why he asked certain kind of question, and that way we develop a shared understanding of what are we going to achieve together. Then we foster the participation by putting the inquiry into the front when we ask the tough questions. We empathetically listen. Empathetic listening is tapping on the emotions and the feelings of the individuals, right? You said this thing. What's going on in your mind? Hey, you were smiling. What's going on in your mind? You are said, and you said, well, you said it. What is that is bothering you? When you are, connecting with the people on their emotions, feelings, they feel safe, they feel less vulnerable, they become more participative in the discussion. Show the humility to acknowledge the gaps and the problem. We made a lot of efforts, but we are not still there. Yes, we have the organization problems, we have the problem. That humility will again, make people feel less vulnerable, connect with your initiatives, and that makes feel them safe as well. And then talk about the structure and processes. Okay, now we are moving towards uh, better clarity. Who are the volunteers who would like to come forward? What kind of groups we can form? What is the tool that we can agree to collaborate? There are many tools that exist, but then do we have one that fits our situation, right? That can give an easy access to everyone, and everybody can come and contribute and collaborate there. And then discuss about the context and documents that you want to share. Finally, in the end of the meeting, you can express the appreciation. Appreciate people for being participative. Thank you. Thank them for being into the call. Then consolidate on the learnings, whatever the learnings has come up so far in this meeting and previous meetings, so that we have a clear visibility of where we stand today. And then set the path forward, talk about the next meeting. And in that, in between, whosoever needs the help and mentoring, who are the people who needs to be reach out can be made clear and end of this meeting also. So this is the framework. And let's talk about one very popular technique also around questioning. And this is called as question burst, which is popularized by Hel Gregersen. And this is his work, in fact, when he has suggested that uh, you ask people to bring in their challenges in the meeting, right? And then engage others that there's a challenge and everybody needs to be participating. Check the emotional temperature, as in how they're feeling about this challenge. Uh, and then you go on, giving the 2 minute for that person to share his challenge in the meeting. Then another 4 minute you give other people to ask the questions. Ask only the questions, no answers there, right? And don't explain. Nobody has to explain why they are asking the question. Any question is a good question, but ask questions fearlessly. And this person who has brought in the challenge is going to note down all the questions one after another. Okay. And after that, we are, again checking the emotional temperature, and the insights are generated. Uh, the person who has brought in the challenge, he's asked like what are the insights that he has generated, and identify the first three critical questions, and then do some analysis there, as in what matters most for him out of these questions, five whys in fact. And then again, based on the data that he has collected, he follow the same process, and he become more closer to the reality. The truth start emerging with those questions, because there are no answers, right? There's no answers, there are only questions. Questions lead reframe the perspective, question leads to the better direction, and finally he is going to end up with the right solution, right? This exercise generates a lot of insights. This exercise creates a lot of psychological safety, right? And if you're wondering like how these insights and 1 to 3 critical questions and matters most phases are covered, then you can go and visit his website, Hall Gregersen. Anyway, I'm presenting the format here. For insights, you can use this kind of template. What is their emotional temperature? What's all the questions have been asked? What is the insight that the person has gained? What are 1 to 3 questions that are is founding interesting? And for every question, why that question matters him most, and what are the why does that region matters to him? And that way he can ask the 5 questions there. Now, based on these 5 questions, he's again have to collect the passive data, and have to understand what is the way forward, what are the actions that is going to take by being wrong, uncomfortable, repeatedly quiet, and repeat the same process then till say rest to the real reasons behind the challenge, and he has those right circumstances and conditions that he need to address to be successful. So that's what I wanted to cover in this session today. But before I close, I would like to end up with a final quote. And this is a famous quote by Elie Wiesel, a Nobel laureate. He said, "In the word question, there's a beautiful word quest." I love that word. We are all partners in the quest. So keep asking questions, keep having the dialogue. Thank you very much. Thanks, RSG Sri Lanka, for this opportunity to talk.
Hi everyone. Just want to say a big thank you to Arjit. So what's going to happen now is we are almost it's a wrap. But please go to the stage. Please go to the stage because we are announcing the winners of this quiz and do the closing ceremony. So we'll see you there at the stage and I'll be joining soon. Thank you so much.